So it is Liverpool's fourth straight Premier League defeat that is dominating the back pages this Sunday morning. John, can you just put your finger on what is going wrong at Liverpool just now?
Well, it is mind-blowing, really. I'm staggered by it because, yes, the previous defeats were bad and surprising. It definitely exposed Liverpool's defending, which is obviously the key issue I would suggest in this. But I think in midweek, you'd like to think they've maybe turned a corner with that dramatic victory in Eintracht Frankfurt, and they go to Brentford, let's be honest here, clearly needing a victory to get the season, and their form back on track. And they were undone again defensively by, long throws, long balls. That sounds rather disingenuous towards Brentford, who are exceptional, by the way. It's certainly not meant like that. I think they deserve their win. But there were so many issues, I thought, for Liverpool. You have to start off with the defence. They don't look comfortable as a unit. It's not working. I mean, there was, quite apart from Van Dijk giving away a penalty, which obviously controversial in its own right, balls through the middle, which exposed Konate. The fullbacks, again, continues to be a problem for Slot. I think fundamentally, for me, we go back to what's gone wrong, and in a way it's hard to argue this because they made an exceptional start to the season. We shouldn't forget this. But there's a couple of factors that I think come into play. So many new signings. It's very rare that you see a team that's just won the title and go into the new season as reigning champions, then almost have to go into a season of transition. But they bought so many new players. And we're not just talking additions to the squad, we are talking absolute starters that Slot wanted to start with. So we're talking about Kerkez, we're seeing, Frimpong. Wirtz was another big signing. Isak was obviously a saga through the summer. They wanted to replenish the midfield. Hugo Ekitike, who could probably argue is the one real shining bright, sort of kind of new signing for them. So I think there's definitely an element there of this team looking very new, still finding its feet, still finding its teammates. I do think, we might explore this, I guess, sort of kind of further, but the summer, what impacted that, and the tragic event of Diogo Jota, which is something that, has been touched on, of course, and was such a huge impact. He was such a loved teammate of so many players, none more so than Mo Salah. It's a really sensitive subject, and obviously it's not one that's going to be talked about in every piece or every press conference because of the sheer sensitive nature of it. But I do think, psychologically and also emotionally, that has to take, a massive impact on players who are so connected to that player. As the most popular player at the dressing room, that has to have an impact as well. And I just think Slot has been faced with trying to bed in new signings, a sense of tragedy in the background and foreground. And it's been a very, very difficult few weeks. And it's going to be the ultimate test, I think, of Slot as a manager, and indeed as a man manager, I think.
Riath, just picking up on what John said there, I'm just going to refer you to Rory Smith's piece on the game in The Observer. He said, look, maybe the signings do not suit each other. Maybe there are too many of them. Maybe there are too many of them in the team all at once. Maybe it was a mistake to move away from the system. Maybe all of those are true. Maybe all of those are only true because the players and the club are confronting an enduring grief at the loss of Diogo Jota. Lots to unpack there, but there is seeming to be a lot of factors contributing to Liverpool's supposed malaise at the moment.
No, completely. And I think when we going to what John and Rory are both saying there about Jota, it's one of those tragic scenarios where it's impossible to actually quantify. And I think at times we've all looked at it this season, and I don't know whether this is the right word, but it's almost sometimes felt crass to try and tie this unspeakable human tragedy to sporting performance. And so it becomes very difficult to assess. But what we can all say with certainty is that it's going to have had a colossal impact on the dressing room, on all of them. And what John's saying there about Mo Salah as well is entirely correct. They were incredibly close as people, as work colleagues. So how much of it is it even a sensible conversation to have to try and apportion it? I don't know, all except to say it is definitely a factor. Now, with the other aspects, I think on that sporting side of things, when we spent all of last season almost damning Slot with faint praise and was this Klopp's team, and what we are seeing now is very definitely the first real redrawing of that squad from Arne Slot, and he has brought in a lot of big hitters. They aren't gelling. I think when I look at someone like Wirtz, we can all see that there is a fantastically gifted player there, but we're not seeing anything like that in the Premier League, which is, of course, a unique environment for a player to come in and adapt to. I tend to think that one is going to work out eventually because there's too much quality in him for it not to. I think Salah, for me, is probably the sharper concern. When a player hits an age, we are very, very quick when we see a slight slump to ask, is this the beginning of the end? I think with Mo Salah, more than anyone, that's probably quite a risky game to play, but he's been absolutely nowhere near his level. I wonder whether there's a slight sort of main character energy factor going on here. Isak's been brought in. He's come in as this record striker. Does that affect Salah's psyche a little bit? Obviously, Isak didn't play yesterday, but he's come in. He's struggled badly. He's got a huge price tag to justify. So we're talking about a huge number of factors before we even come to losing someone like Trent Alexander-Arnold from the squad as well. So we're seeing vulnerabilities on all kinds of fronts, and Slot's spelling them out themselves. We don't like playing against a direct opponent. High balls scare us. I mean, next team up, you're just going to pepper Liverpool with high balls, aren't you? So it's an interesting one, and there are so many aspects to it. I don't know where the quick fix comes from, apart from the obvious, which is they have got brilliant players. They should be able to play far better than they are. So,
Jack, in the Mail on Sunday, they've described it as champs to chumps. And Oliver Holt, who was at the game, says it was the most concerning performance of Liverpool's season so far. This is a side suddenly full of recriminations, staring and muttering and gesturing at each other, a side that looks adrift. Picking up on what the guys have said already, and John made the point of a title-winning side rarely makes that many changes. It's normally an evolution rather than what feels like a revolution. Do you think they've made too many changes for them to be really, really serious title contenders, even though we did think that after 5 games of this season?
Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? I think you look at the way they spent in the summer and everyone thinks you're doing this from a position of strength. You're spending so much money, getting all of these top players. So many were in, Bayern Munich were in for Florian Wirtz. Isak is somebody that anyone would have taken. Ekitike is clearly, and like John said, he's the only one that's really shown his worth so far. He's the one that comes in and hits the ground running. But I think in terms of the change, it's probably the change to the starting 11 that's the biggest concern. You can add to the squad and bulk up the squad and really kick the squad on without having to change the starting 11 so dramatically so early on. They look, and I think, Ollie Holt is right, it is probably the most concerning one so far.
Because that's the comparison people have made between Liverpool and Arsenal. I know
exactly.
We'll talk about Arsenal later, but Arsenal were almost criticised, weren't they, for not bringing in more players,
more big names, more ones that slot in. Yeah, and they've added depth really well, whereas Slot has had to manage so much change, as we've said, settling in new signings with a squad that he doesn't know how they're all reacting because of what we've discussed with Jota. And they look, especially yesterday, they just look uncomfortable and not able to control the way the game is flowing. You saw some of the players, the way Konate was defending for the goal where Damsgaard played in Sharda. It's just so unlike the Liverpool team that we were used to seeing last season. They were so effortlessly efficient last year that it was almost not dull, but you knew what to expect and you knew what you were going to get, and you'd see Liverpool win 2-0 and take another step towards the title. They were so calm, composed and comfortable in what they were doing. All of this changes, the relationships aren't quite there with anyone, and I agree with John, at the back is where the biggest concern is. They're having to pull Szoboszlai, who can be an absolute engine in the middle, to right back, having to shift him around to move him back in at times. Kirkes, we know there's a terrific player in there, a terrific counter-attacking player in there. He showed that at Bournemouth, but defensively looks incredibly suspect at the moment. And it's hard to wonder why the solution isn't just bring Andy Robertson back in for a bit. It seems like Slot has rushed to make these changes to the starting 11 and is really hurting them at the moment.
Yeah, I must say, I do think of Robertson. I think that's a great point in that Robertson is such a good leader, has been such an important character and figure. I know it's obvious that he's not perhaps the player that he was, because he was without doubt one of the best left backs in the world. I still think he can be sometimes the glue, rather than, and maybe you have to bring in Kirkes slowly. I mean, Gary Neville, I was listening to his podcast post Old Trafford on my way back, on my post Anfield last Sunday. I was listening to the podcast on the way back. Described him as a 10-year-old playing left back, which was harsh. But I have to say, on the basis of that United performance at Anfield, arguably, it was pretty brutal criticism, but fair criticism at the same time. The other point was that I did think that Ollie, in his piece there, I think he was referencing the sort of kind of look of sort of kind of distrust almost amongst the players, sort of kind of the accusatory looks amongst the teammates. That's a worry, because Liverpool have been such a strong unit, such a bond and such a togetherness. And that is why I think you need perhaps people like Robertson to kind of, gel it together. I also think that Wirtz, I make no bones about it. I know you'll take the mickey out of me for Victor Gyokeres and our discussions about him and his worth later on. But I do think that sort of Wirtz, I backed him to be the player of the year. I think that Wirtz is an unbelievable talent, and I have no doubt whatsoever that Liverpool will come back, and I think Wirtz will still be a superstar. But not only is he trying to adapt to a new system of football, a new club, a new city, but he's the 10 in a system that didn't have a 10 before. I mean, it's completely different for him, and no wonder it's taking time for Liverpool to gel and sort of kind of come together, I think.
You also, I think, look at, in terms of the distrust and body language, Salah's body language as well. If he misses a chance, last season you'd see the glare in his eyes and the stare that I will sort this out. Yesterday, he did score a very good goal, but he was poor overall. Chances missed, his head was down, he didn't look up for the fight as he normally is as well.
But Konate as well, that sort of slightly disinterested chase. I think it was second goal. He's coming back in and sort of, he's given up. He's given up. Where's the real sort of burst? Where's the aggression within? I think that's the difference we're seeing, because this is, Liverpool. We're talking about a team which is obviously technical gifts through the roof, but they're also fighters and they're scrappers. And I'm looking at Konate there, and I'm just thinking more and more what kind of side this would have been had they actually got Mark Gay across the line, for instance. But I thought that was one of the most sort of damning aspects of the whole thing yesterday. A leader in this team pretty much giving up on a chase.
And you mentioned all of the technical players that Liverpool do have in their squad, and yet in the Sunday Times, it's quite a damning headline, isn't it? Out of ideas, which we probably would never have predicted any kind of headline like that being in the Sunday Times with regard to Liverpool. It's all often said, I know it's quite a big cliche, you can't win titles early on in the season, but you can certainly lose them. They could find themselves 7 points behind a very machine-like Arsenal team at the moment. Is it too early to write them off? We're only gone through, match day 9?
I think it is too early, yeah. I do think that Liverpool will come back. Are they going to be the force that they were and as dominant in the Premier League this season as they were last? It's impossible to believe that, I think. But the one thing that I think you can say is that Liverpool have a strength and an experience and a quality that still makes their squad formidable and difficult to kind of compare against anyone else, because they won it by a street last year and they've only gone and signed better players, and they will come good. It's too early. There was a weekend, wasn't there, a few weekends back, when Liverpool were at Palace. Obviously, that was their first defeat. And then Arsenal were the next day at Newcastle, which looked a very, very daunting fixture. And basically we're suddenly saying, well, if Liverpool win there and Arsenal, slip up as they might, Liverpool could be, 6 points clear, and then is the title race all over. So that just tells you, I think, just how quickly things can turn around. I think it's going to be difficult for Liverpool to dominate as they were, but I think it's dangerous to write them out of the title race just yet.
And I'm sure all the Brentford fans who are watching are saying, there were two teams in this match yesterday. Jack, we must talk about Keith Andrews very quickly. Many experts, I don't know whether you guys had predicted this as well at the start of the season, had Brentford maybe as a shoo-in for relegation maybe, and Keith Andrews, question was how long was he going to last? Not a bit of it. How impressive have you been with the job he's done so far?
It's incredible. I mean, I don't know if I stick myself quite in the expert camp, but I was definitely predicting them to be in real trouble this season. I went to his unveiling as manager, and you're sort of sat there hearing Keith Andrews very confident and sure of what's going to come and how they're going to navigate through everything. Phil Giles, the chief executive, was alongside him just saying, look, I don't know why you're all so worried. We're very relaxed here, and once again, Brentford